When I was growing up, as I'm sure most of you, we were told that people don't regenerate. Starfish regenerate, and salamanders can regenerate. And the way that they regenerate is by using stem cells. That's how a starfish that's missing an arm will grow a new leg from a salamander. But it turns out that we're all regenerating. We all have stem cells inside our bodies. And these stem cells are being used all the time. That's why our hair grows back after a haircut. That's why our skin, that's why you get dandruff. That's why our gut replaces itself. That's why our liver is able to regenerate. We do regenerate, just often not that quickly. But we regenerate in important ways throughout our existence. And the question is, when do stem cells come into play? Stem cells come into play for regeneration when we're injured. So this is actually showing that in 25 patients in Italy who suffered a burn and went to an emergency room, got admitted to the hospital, and they just measured their blood at different time points. And over the course of the hospitalization, you can see, starting from the time of admission to the hospital, more and more and more stem cells came out, because the stem cells which live in our bone marrow are trying to heal up that skin in the wound. That's regeneration. That's a kind of real bona fide regeneration. And the greater the injury, the more the stem cells have to come out. More injury, more stem cells needed, right? We need to regenerate more furiously. And in fact, for cardiovascular disease, this was from the New England Journal of Medicine, a very important paper out of Germany that showed if you just took people who were getting, their angiography, as you saw with the dyes being shot, and you measured their blood and seeing how many stem cells are naturally in their blood, you can see that the group in blue who had more stem cells in their blood actually had fewer, they did a lot better, they survived longer, they had fewer cardiovascular events. The ones who didn't do as well in green had fewer stem cells. More stem cells, more regeneration, more repair of the heart, longer survival. Less stem cells, you're in trouble. Now, here's the problem. As we age, our stem cells also start to lose their punch. We have less of them. The ones that we have don't work quite as well. This is just kind of a natural part of our life cycle, but and because of that, there are a number of diseases where impairments of stem cells are important. So when you have hair loss, alopecia, baldness, Alzheimer's disease, stem cells in the brain, asthma, you get scarring and you actually don't have enough stem cells to keep repairing the lungs, ischemic heart disease, macular degeneration. There's some amazing reports coming out of England now of people who are having stem cells injections of their eyes that regenerate their retina, and they're able to get some vision back from being legally blind. Stem cells, as we get older, are weaker. If we could actually replace them with stem cell therapies, it is really a whole new future of medicine. And that's really what the biotechnology world is doing. I'm involved with that. I've been involved with that for well over a decade. But that's biotechnology. You're talking about $1 billion at 10 years, unknown safety issues. What about food? Do foods stimulate stem cells? And the answer is yes. First one I want to show you is cacao or chocolate. It turns out that studies have been done where if you take chocolate with high flavanols and make a hot chocolate out of it, and you drink it just twice a day, 2 cups a day, for 30 days, you can start by measuring your stem cells, and this is from 16 subjects, and you can make the stem cell levels go up. This is 2 cups of hot chocolate, of high flavanol hot chocolate, just twice a day. By the way, all of these patients had cardiovascular disease. They had documented blockages in their arteries in their heart, and they could get more stem cells going. That is a small study, but really, really interesting to think about. So again, we need to pay attention to what kind of studies these are. This is a clinical trial. It's a small study, but it actually is really important because it correlates with some of the other information I showed you. A larger study, 20,000 people in Germany, showed that, that those who ate 7.5 grams of chocolate per day lowered the risk of heart attack or stroke by 39%. Okay, what is 7.5 grams of chocolate? It's about 3 chocolate chips. Got to be dark chocolate, not that much. And it's, by the way, I want to say it's not the dairy in the chocolate. It's not the sugar in the chocolate. It is that natural chemical in cacao. And that's what we need to be able to do is, the final product that we're served up by companies isn't necessarily what's good for us. But we need to be able to discern what it is that is actually in the food that might be doing us a favor. Now, diabetes we've talked about is a big problem. Now I'm going to stack what you heard. Diabetes impairs the stem cells in our bodies. If you have diabetes, your stem cells just, they're kind of sleepy and they don't want to work as hard. And there's fewer of them. But it turns out that omega-3 fatty acids have been studied. They can stimulate those stem cells and wake them up and say, hey, go do your job. Now, I'm not saying that this is the one answer to all the problems with stem cells, but it is really interesting that when you actually have omega-3s, that you can actually get this type of statistically significant increase in the activity of your stem cells, wake up stem cells. Now, there are patterns that enhance our stem cells. Mediterranean diet, not surprisingly, also helps the stem cells. The Okinawan diet, they actually have studied the vegetables that the people in Okinawa eat. This is in a blue zone. They actually stimulate stem cells. Caloric restriction, we heard a little bit about that during the Q&A, helps your stem cells. Even intermittent fasting, it turns out when you really fast, you get your body responds in all kinds of ways. One of them is getting rid of all the old cells that are not as good anymore. And then when you start eating again, it reboots all the stem cells to come out and rebuild. It rebuilds your immune system, in fact. So there are also patterns that hurt our stem cells. High fat, high salt, hyperglycemic diets, okay, all injure our stem cells. So again, these are, I don't have the time to show you all the data for every single piece of information I'm showing you, but the data exists, and it actually shows you that there are explanations for some of these things that we know to be true, not good for us, or things to be good for us. And that helps us get more comfortable. When things make sense, we're more likely to do them. Here's just a partial list of foods that stimulate stem cells. Again, I don't have time to show you everything, but I mean, look, squid ink. I don't know if any of you have ever had squid ink pasta, black pasta, but it's a delicacy in some parts of the Mediterranean and Spain, and it actually, goji berries, another herbal tea, okay? Now, one exception to stem cells, because they're generally good for us. They help us regenerate, but cancers like them too. Cancer stem cells are a big problem. They are kind of the holy grail for cancer researchers because they are like baby cancer cells that make more babies. And in fact, cancer stem cells are responsible, we think, for most of the times that cancers come back after successful treatment. How many people know of a case where you have a breast cancer that's removed and the patient looks like they're fine, and then a few years later, it comes back? Or a colon cancer, that's like the worst thing that can happen if you've been successfully treated and then it recurs. It recurs because of the cancer stem cells. And so what we want to do is find a way to actually target those little mini baby cancer stem cells so the tumors won't recur. Well, guess what? It turns out that some foods target cancer stem cells. It's really amazing. This is just a partial list. Purple potatoes target colon cancer stem cells. Cacao targets breast cancer stem cells. Green tea, it's colon and breast. Thyme, Thanksgiving's coming up. That hits prostate cancer. So again, this is the research. This has been done in a laboratory. You isolate cancer stem cells. You look at what the impact of these food bioactives are. Then you test it in an animal. Then you start taking a look in patient samples. It's really quite amazing to think that we can actually eat. I mean, think about the patient's been successfully treated and you don't want that cancer to come back. Shouldn't you be on a diet, or shouldn't you include foods in your diet that actually target those cancer stem cells? Brand new gateway opening up for us to think about how to manage cancer patients. Switching on to microbiome, another defense system. We know that bacteria are important. I told you there's 37 trillion of them. Obviously, you've heard a little bit about them before. I can't go through all 37 trillion. In fact, we barely know much about all those bacteria, but I will tell you one thing. We've got roughly the same number of human cells in our bodies as we do bacteria. So we're 50% bacteria and 50% human. You know what they call that? I mean, well, first of all, it's like a coral reef, right? It's a reef, a skeleton, a coral with a lot of other, like clownfish around it, Nemo. The thing, though, is that there's actually a term for animals or organisms that are not just one type of organism. Like all of us in this room, we are not just human. We are partly bacteria. 50% of us are bacteria, and they call this, there's a term for this called holobiont, Holobiont. That's what humans are. We are holobionts because we are 50% humans, 50% bacteria, and the bacteria help us with our health. These are the conditions, and the list is growing, where we know that our gut bacteria are abnormal or disturbed. It's called dysbiosis because we got a problem with them. We don't understand everything about it, but we know people with Alzheimer's disease, their gut bacteria is disturbed. Atherosclerosis, something between the gut bacteria and the lining of the blood vessels, as we heard about earlier. Even bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, major depression, all associated with our gut. Celiac disease, food allergies, hypertension. By the way, there's also bacteria in your mouth. If you actually use that super type of antiseptic that sometimes dentists give after you have major dental work, you wipe out your mouth biome. Okay, and that causes your blood pressure to go up because the mouth bacteria also digest the food that you eat in order to help lower your blood pressure. So again, we're just beginning to discover this. I told you at the very beginning how many new things we're discovering about our health. So this is, we could have a whole weeks of conference on the microbiome and still not even scratch the surface. But I will tell you what we're discovering is that there are some foods that we eat that actually contain bacteria, and the same bacteria that our healthy gut is made out of. Like, for example, kimchi on the upper right-hand corner. It's packed with bacteria. Bacteroidetes, Firmicutes, Lactobacillus. If you go to a Chinese restaurant, you have a little pickled appetizer. It's got Firmicutes and Lactobacillus. Sauerkraut, which I didn't realize this, but originally sauerkraut came from Asia, and then it was exported over the Silk Road, and then it took root in Eastern Europe. But sauerkraut also has Lactobacillus. When it's fermented, the lactobacillus comes from the air that settles down, and as the cabbage ferments, the bacteria start growing, and the lactobacillus dominates, kicks out all of it. Then we eat it, then we put the bacteria into our gut. Now, there's a couple of other things. Sourdough bread. This is a big surprise. Sourdough is actually made with lactobacillus inside the dough. Now, there's been research studies looking at the number of different types of lactobacillus that are present in sourdough, the dough itself. And if you've never seen how to actually look at bacteria in bread, in the bread dough, this is the graph. You can actually pick out the individual bacteria and characterize them and profile them. But there's one of these bacteria which is particularly important called Lactobacillus reuteri, which originally is delivered from the mom. Something that is startling is we're realizing that this bacteria, Lactobacillus reuteri, lives in the colon. When the mom is 9 months pregnant, there's a signal sent from the uterus to the colon, and it causes this bacteria to come out of the colon inside blood cells. It kind of like calls an Uber, picks up a cell, and it rides all the way to the breast, where it lives. It gets out of the Uber by the nipple. And when the actual breastfeeding begins, the mother's milk injects this bacteria into the baby. And so this is another example of how the microbiome actually works. It turns out that this bacteria actually can reduce the growth of breast cancer. And it comes from breastfeeding. And at least in the laboratory, if the mom actually is able to breastfeed with the Lactobacillus reuteri, it'll protect 4 generations later on against breast cancer. So again, really powerful stuff that we're beginning to, but it's present in sourdough bread. And this is actually from the breast tumor study, healthy diet. Breast cancers don't grow very well. Put them on a fast food diet. You might not be surprised that breast cancer grows much faster. Now you feed the animal fast food, but Lactobacillus reuteri, it activates the microbiome defense against cancer, upregulating your immune system, and the breast cancers have a hard time growing.